All right, gentlemen, I'm just let's see how many people we have in attendance so far. I'm seeing just about 20 of us so far. What we're going to do is we'll probably give it another minute or so to give everyone a chance to jump online. So, okay, guys, thanks for making time to jump on this webinar tonight. What we're going to do is we'll probably give another minute or so for more people to jump online. If anyone is on that's got my cell phone number, if you could please just shoot me a text to make sure that everyone could hear okay. I'd appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, we're going to have a bit of a slow start with the webinar, so we're going to get rolling here. Some of this might have been covered in your local training session, but if so, that's great. So moving forward, guys. Again, this is a 2019 Rules webinar. The goal for today is cover two different topics. I want to cover game management, specifically working the ramp. I want to watch a few clips involving rap checks and how to appropriately call these and what we're watching for at different moments. Managing illegal body checks and interpretations of these plays, and working on standardizing some language when speaking with coaches, with players, just so that way the explanations are going to be similar for what's happening and being conveyed in the Fox Valley as it is in Milwaukee and as it is in the Madison area. And lastly, we want to talk about interpreting the offensive ward call. This is a rules update for this year to completely reverse the interpretation from last year. So essentially what it is, it's all about managing the bull dodge. So with no further ado, we're going to move forward. So for the first point of conversation tonight is how to work the ramp. Guys, all of tonight's conversation is revolving around NFHS interpretation, how we control and how we manage games at the youth level. It's going to be very different than what we do at the high school. And again, I'll say this a few times tonight, we're strictly looking at this from a high school perspective only. So please don't apply the interpretations of rep checks and so forth to the youth level. So again, make sure we know what level we're talking about. So when we talk about the ramp, the main thing that we're discussing is, how are we going to be focusing our adjudication for technical penalties up to 1 minute sportsmanlike conduct through 3 minute ejection. The ramp, what we're talking about is we're typically going to start with a verbal warning, whether this is coaches or players. After the verbal warning, we're going to work our way through a conduct foul with possession, which is just simply taking the ball away or awarding possession. The next step up is going to be a conduct foul without possession. This is going to become a 30-second technical penalty. Working up through unsportsmanlike conduct or a 1 minute non-releasable, all the way up to a 3 minute non-releasable unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. As the biggest part about working the ramp is, there's plenty of behavior that happens on the field that doesn't necessarily warrant a 1 minute unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, but yet we know that it's behavior that we want removed from the game. So the big thing that we need to do, especially as veteran officials, it's real easy for us to say that, I've got broad shoulders and I can take this verbal lashing from a coach. But at the end of the day, we've got plenty of newer officials that are still learning the craft, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we're working through this ramp at all times to help maintain proper bench decorum, as well as interactions with players on the field. So again, if the behavior is not quite bad enough for an unsportsmanlike conduct, as we need to start utilizing the conduct penalty. It is a a great tool for us to use to modify behavior. It tells the coaches and the players that we know what's happening out there. It's a quick shot across the bow and used properly that hopefully we can keep from using the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So, again, focusing here on the lower part of the ramp, we've got the verbal warning, conduct foul with possession, and conduct foul without possession. As I mentioned before, if we properly utilize, these first three steps in the ramp, oftentimes we can put ourselves in a situation where we can avoid the upper portions of the ramp that involve serious time-serving penalties. So, as long as we're consistent, we could draw clear lines with the verbal warnings, and when the line is crossed, then we start to assess conduct fouls. I think we're all going to be pleasantly surprised with how much of the behavior we're able to curb with just something as simple as avoiding possession or taking the ball away. As far as the other two stages of the ramp, there are certain things that take away the coaches that benefit of the doubt to utilize the ramp and give them a conduct penalty or a verbal warning. These are things like personal attacks. If a coach says, you are horrible, you're a terrible official, anything of the personal nature. Guys, we do not have to tolerate this, and this is not acceptable behavior that's out there. I expect everyone to be flagging coaches immediately for a 1 minute unsportsmanlike conduct penalty as soon as there's a personal attack. The other one, F-bombs. There's plenty of foul language that's out there. If there is a scene that's being made, or if you hear a coach yelling and cursing at you, again, he has lost a courtesy at that point in time of the first three steps in the ladder. And I highly encourage you to go straight to the unsportsmanlike conduct section. And I know that every assigner in the state is going to fully back you up with that decision. So don't go looking for, something subtle that's mentioned to, on the bench side. You can give a gentle warning for that. But if it is a public display and there's a loud volume where, the spectators can hear this, or if it's directed at you, flag that right away. Again, that is not anything that we need to be tolerating. Straight ejections. There are several things that can happen to warrant a straight ejection. Deliberately striking. This is for defenseless players striking the head or neck area in a violent nature. Attempted strike. It's in the rule book that you're allowed. Let's make sure that we know what's happening before we call the attempted strike. Leaving the bench during an altercation. Guys, we're not necessarily looking to nitpick someone who takes half a step over a line, but if someone is leaving the bench area to make the situation worse or to dive into a scuffle, even if they're trying to help, it's hard enough for us to clear that situation with 10 on 10. We don't need it being made worse. The rule book calls for straight ejection. Use of tobacco. Second non-releasable unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. And flagrant misconduct. So with that, guys, the main thing to keep in mind when working that ramp is that when utilized properly, we really have a chance to curb some negative behavior without really interjecting flags and time-serving penalties into the equation. As I mentioned before, I think that we'll all be pleasantly surprised with telling the coach that, hey, coach, here's your one warning. We're done with this. And then as soon as they cross that line another time, that we flag it right, or that we issue a conduct penalty, and we let them know that, hey, coach, you were warned. They're going to know that we're not messing around, and they're going to know not to push that envelope. So please, practice working. Well, practice. Use that ladder whenever possible to try and curb the negative behavior. Especially the type of behavior that could, if not addressed properly, can quickly become, the 1 minute unsportsmanlike conduct penalties or other time-serving penalties of a greater nature that, we could have curtailed with lesser involvement. So, guys, utilize that. It's a great tool in our tool check. Moving on to one-handed wrap checks, specifically dealing with the consistency with interpretations. We've all seen, some of the classic wrap checks. Some are good, some are bad, and some are certainly ugly. It can be hard during a game, in particular with a two-man game. But even with a three-man game, it can also be challenging for straight line to, whenever we see that stick swinging in a wild fashion, it's easy to, for us to be grabbing at the flag right away. And, it's not always a penalty, but it is important for us to make sure that we know, what level we're officiating. As I mentioned before, guys, at the youth level, every one-handed stick check is illegal. However, at the high school level, it is tolerated as long as it's within the confines of the rules. So with that said, for those of you guys that work football out there, with a wrap check, it's a great check to make when you're trailing the guy with the ball and you're in chase mode. But as we all know, bad things happen in chase mode. So there's some things that are good and some things that are bad. So with that said, what are you watching for when it comes to wrap checks? The windup is not the problem; it's the contact that becomes the problem. As we can see in the picture to the right, there's a pretty hefty windup. He's in chase mode. We need to be thinking that there's a few things to watch for. First off, what level of play are we officiating? Is there a strike or blow that's happening? Is there any chance of reaching the cross, or is the player just swinging at something and hoping to hit the cross? So again, the main thing that we're looking for, it's not necessarily the windup, but it's the contact that we're looking for, specifically when it comes to a strike or a blow. We've got a pretty good video clip to watch here. You're going to see two consecutive wrap checks by the player in blue. One thing that you're going to find is that they both make different types of contact. There's the first wrap check, and there's the second wrap check. So, as with that said, let me try and show this video one more time. And one thing that we're going to see with the very first wrap check, as soon as this loads here, well, maybe it's not going to load. Sorry guys, give it just a second here. So again, that first wrap check in chase mode, there's a pretty good whack on the offhand. So with that, what we're going to have an issue with, again, guys, that's a pretty solid strike or a blow. Now, that type of contact, if that's on the hand that's on the lower portion of the cross, that's holding on to the cross, we're going to have a no call because that's striking, making contact with the stick. But here in this chase mode situation, the player in blue has a solid strike or blow to the offhand of the player. There's no chance of dislodging the ball or making contact with the cross. The challenge in this particular play is that you can see the official kind of between the two bodies. So he's in a very tough spot to accurately see where that level of contact is. So he's stuck watching, the windup, which we all know looks bad, but he's not in a good spot to see the level of contact. So we really need to make sure that, with our mechanics, we're putting ourselves in the best possible angle to see these plays. Sometimes in quick transition, there's no great angle, but just make sure we know what we're watching for, and we can see it the correct way. So again, that first wrap check with a solid striker blow to that bottom hand with no chance of making the cross, in contact with a cross, we got a flag down for a slash in that situation. As we continue the play, we can see the stick does wrap around the player without making real significant contact or a strike or a blow to the body area. Now, the windup looks exactly the same as the first one, but the level of contact is very different. So that second wrap check, that needs to be interpreted as a no call, just because the main thing that we're looking for with flash calls are strikes or blows, and this does not qualify as either one of those two. So again, what we would have is a single flag down for the wrap check, and you're probably going to have a coach who's going to see a flag come up, by the time we process it on that second wrap check. But we need to be able to anticipate the objection and let them know that, no, coach, the bad wrap check was the first one. The second one was fine. The first one got him in the offhand and was a strike or a blow. So, guys, again, I encourage you to not officiate the windup, but make sure that we're officiating the level of contact that's happening from the wrap check. And with that said, if anyone gets video clips from any coaches this year showing, wrap checks, we're always looking for good ones. This one came out of Georgia, and we got pretty lucky with it. So again, guys, when it comes to the wrap check, the things to remember: nothing good happens in chase zone. So what we're doing is we're watching for holds with a cross. We're watching for holds with a free hand. Push with possession is also on our radar. And ultimately, we're looking for that slash. So just work on positioning, work on making sure we're improving our angles to get the best look at these plays. And we should be able to really increase the consistency of the adjudication of the wrap check. All right, moving on to illegal body checks. Guys, we're not here to talk about, what an illegal body check is or what is not an illegal body check. The big thing that we're going to be covering here over the next, probably 15 minutes or so is how do we determine when an illegal body check jumps up to a 2-minute, a 3-minute, and an ejection type penalty. We've got a few clips as well during this to take a look at that'll really help us, create some level of consistency. So it's one thing for us to consistently adjudicate the penalty. It's another thing for us to, clearly communicate what was wrong with the contact to the coaches and to the players. The greater the consistency that we have in explaining the infraction to the coaches in the 3 different markets, I think the better the understanding that the coaches throughout the state are going to have with the types of contact that we're looking to remove. So with that said, let's take a look at the first illegal body check here. I'll watch it one more time for good measure. All right, guys, I chose this clip not because, it's that gray area of was this illegal or was this not illegal. Guys, I want to start off with one of the clearest videos that we have of one of the worst types of illegal body checks that we'll see out in the game. The things that we see that's bad with this level of contact, we've got a player that has a significant run up onto the backside of a player with his arms apart, making excessively violent contact. Guys, this is a prime example of a straight ejection illegal body check with no attempt to play the ball with a defenseless player. This cannot be a 1-minute penalty. This cannot be a 2-minute penalty. This needs to be a 3-minute plus an ejection. The very nature of the game of lacrosse, the NFHS and U.S. Lacrosse is really looking to, get rid of most of the violent contact. But even 20 years ago, this would have been a bad play. So I encourage you, this, again, needs to be a straight-up ejection penalty. Now, how do you convey this to the coach? To the coach, obviously he's going to try to advocate for his player. Is, coach, 15-yard run up, he lined up a defenseless player, and it was a violent hit, ejected. You'll probably still hear some feedback, but again, this is a pretty clear example of a player that needs to be removed from the game. There's probably going to be an injury after this game. Guys, I would definitely encourage you to take your time on the restart and really ramp up the level of officiating and the tightness of the officiating afterwards, because the chances of there being retaliation in this type of situation are going to be pretty high. So stay alert out there in this type of situation. And also remember, after the game, if there is an ejection, your first phone call is not to your boyfriend, not to your girlfriend, not to whomever. The first call you make is going to be to your assigner. Let them know about the level of contact, because I can guarantee that they're going to be receiving a phone call from the coach. So give your assigner a courtesy call and let them know what's coming. Next, here's another example of a legal body check. So again, the contact is going to be on the long pole that scooped up the face-off as he's running down and dishes the pass away. So what we'll see is just the long pole coming in late, and we've got an issue with that. The problem that we have with this is we have a body check that was maybe a little bit late. It wasn't overly violent, but yet there was still contact with the head or neck area. Let me see if I can. So this is probably about as good of a pulse point as we're going to see. We can see the player comes in, he's lining up his, we can't quite tell if it's contact with a cross or with a gloved area. We can see that that contact is initiated at the shoulder level. And let me see if I can get a quick. Yeah, that's going to be a pretty good stop there. We can see that it started, the contact started legal, assuming that it made contact with the glove area. But the contact just rode up into the head area. But he didn't, it doesn't appear to be any attempt to finish high or to kill, or to really, take the player out or have an excessively violent hit. So this type of play, with an illegal body check, we need to see that contact to the head area where the contact did rise up over the shoulder. And we need to adjudicate this as a 2-minute illegal body check. How we convey this information to the coach is, coach started legal, but the, high in the shoulder, but the check rode up and got him in the head. 2-minute locked in illegal body check. So again, emphasize the fact that it started legal, but then rode up. But don't say finished high, because finished high means that he finished the body check off. This just simply rode up on the shoulder into the head area. And that's why it's going to be a good starting point of a 2-minute locked in penalty. That's also a good chance to talk about the fact that if we do have an illegal body check to the head or neck area, they are all going to be 2 minutes or above. On top of that, and they're all going to be locked in. We do not have any 1-minute locked in illegal body checks, and we don't have any 2-minute releasable or 3-minute releasable illegal body checks involving the head or neck area. Everything is going to be locked in at 2 or more minutes. Moving on to another example of an illegal body check. And I'll watch that one more time. All right, guys, this play is real similar to the play that we had before. Maybe a touch late, but still, a pretty typical physical lacrosse play. We've got contact that starts legal as far as where it is on the body of the defensive player and the offensive player. So we got some of the starts in the kind of the high shoulder area, but through the contact, the white players cross and hands just wide up in the chest area of the player. Hard to say from this angle, or to see from this angle, or hard to say. But I would be inclined to say that that it was not intended to kill the player or to really have an excessively violent contact. If that's how you deem this play, where he didn't look to finish him high and take his head off, and it was more incidental that the stick contact rode up. Again, the way to convey this, to communicate this with the coach or the player is, hey coach, contact started clean, but the contact rode up to the head or neck area. We've got a 2-minute legal body check, full time. The key words are going to be started legal, but rode up into the head or neck area, 2-minute legal body check. In this type of play, if it's something that when you see it, that he really finished high through the head or neck area, and there was a serious attempt at a violent level of contact, finishing the head or neck area, where say, coach, he started good, but he finished high. We got a 3-minute type penalty, but we'll talk about 3-minute penalties here in a second. You can see with his arms out, he was definitely expecting something to happen. But anyway, guys, just make sure that we're watching through the level of contact. Well, it's pretty easy in this play, as he scoots that ball away, it's real easy for us to start watching the pass and what can happen. Let's make sure that we stay on that passer or whoever's about to get schmucked. Let's take an extra second to keep our eyes on that player just to protect them. Well, not keep it from happening, but to make sure that we can properly adjudicate the bad stuff when it happens. Same clip one last time. Again, good example of of one that could be dummied down to a 2-minute illegal body check, locked in. Here's a nice plug for law offices of Shannon Posner. Not sure where that comes from. All right, let's watch that one more time. One more time. All right, guys, this type of contact, this is going to be very different from the second and the third videos. We got a ball that's well away. We've got the player in red has his head down and is in a defenseless position. We've got contact that starts questionably high. And let's do a play and pause. We've got the player in white that is launching into the upper torso of the defensive player. Oops, hold on. It's a hard hit. He's looking to make a hard hit, but I don't think he's trying to kill the kid. This is a good situation where we can have a 3-minute illegal body check. And what I would encourage everyone to do is, if you have a 3-minute illegal body check, there needs to be a conversation about ejecting the player. If the level of play that you saw, if your gut tells you there's no way that's worthy of an ejection, you can still have a 3-minute penalty. But at least make sure that you're having that conversation and make sure that everyone saw it the same way. So, one last time. Again, this should be interpreted at a starting point of a 3-minute illegal body check because the player was defenseless and there was excessively physical contact, maybe the head and neck area. And the conversation with the coach is going to be, coach, he's defenseless, he launched into the player, and that's going to be how you're going to have that conversation with the coach. And that's going to set the stage for a 3-minute legal body check with the possibility of ejection. Guys, again, the keys to remember with the illegal body check. Did start legal, but rode up high on the player, 2-minute locked-in penalty. Did it start legal, finished high, and the player didn't pull off? So again, did he finish high? We got a 3-minute locked-in, possible ejection. Did it start high, finish high? We've got a 3-minute locked-in, probable ejection. Did he launch high to high? Guys, without a doubt, we've got a 3-minute locked-in with ejection. So also keep in mind that there are no releasable illegal body check calls involving the head or neck area. So make sure everything is locked in. It's going to be for at least 2 minutes. So guys, there's a lot of key words that are in here that, you know, with a lot of out-of-conference play that's happening with teams traveling to, you know, Madison teams going to Bay Valley going to Milwaukee, or any version of that. The greater the consistency that we can have with how we are describing the play that we are adjudicating to the benches, in theory, you know, the greater the understanding the coaches should have. I'm not saying I have to agree with it, but if we are maintaining some consistency with how we're describing it, I think our lives are going to be a whole lot easier. Offensive wording. Guys, again, this was a rule change or a new interpretation. They're 2019 than what we had in 2018. And kind of what this all surrounds is what's happening with the bull dodge. The new rule states a player in possession of the ball with both hands on his cross shall not use his hand or arm to push the body of the player applying the check. Note, the legal body check, spearing, and unnecessary roughness shall be strictly enforced as personal fouls. Again, just to make sure that we're completely, this is a complete reversal from last year's interpretation. What they're trying to do to take away the bull dodge, where there is, you know, just a clearing out of a defensive player that is just standing and occupying space. Keys to officiating the new word, equal pressure is the key. Guys, if the defensive player is extending his cross or extending his body, his arms to block the offensive player, that offensive player can start to use, you know, with both hands on the cross, he can really start to use that lower arm to gain some separation. But he can only do that if the defensive player is also extending pressure as well. When the defender is extending his cross to play D, the offensive player with both hands on his cross can push off and through the defender's cross to gain separation. Pushing off the body of the defensive player is the problem, and, you know, in addition to award, also watch for spearing and illegal body checks. So guys, we're going to have a couple of really, actually, you know, just great quality videos. They are not on level with the NFHS side, but just know that we're taking a look at is going to be the level of contact. Now, we're probably not going to see this level of play, the high school level, but let's just take a look at this and see what we find. All right, guys, so that level of play, the problem that we're going to have with this offensive war, again, if the defensive player is extending to play defense, equal pressure is allowed. So in this particular play, give me a quick second here, guys. In this clip, guys, it's going to show the defender absorbs the contact with the body and not the cross, and then the offensive player extends a swung push off the body. Per rule, this is not going to be deemed a. Sorry, hold on a second. Let's get it back going one more time. This will be deemed an offensive warding call. Again, the defensive player is not really extending to draw contact, and we don't have an equal pressure situation. So this is the type of play that they're looking to remove. The next clip is going to be a good example of an equal pressure type situation, and hopefully between the two videos we can really see the difference that's out there. Sorry guys, this is a little clunky. So here, player in white has the ball, and we're going to see, the defensive player, the long pole, is really extending, his body to draw contact in his cross. And then we're seeing the extension of the lower arm of the offensive player. This is the type of play that the U.S. Lacrosse and NFHS are trying to allow. It's an equal pressure situation, even though it's kind of in the 60-40 range. We don't have a defenseless defensive player that is just getting blown up by the bull dodge. So it's a tricky call, and it's real, like I said, being a complete change from last year's rule. It is going to be a little bit of a challenge for us to officiate, but I'm real sure that we can that we'll be able to do a good job with this. The key is to officiate a new ward. Again, guys, equal pressure is the key. When the defender is extending his cross to play D, the offensive player with both hands on his cross can push off and through the defender to gain separation. Pushing off the body of the defensive player is the problem. So if that defensive player has to stick in, and the offensive player drives in and extends his elbow and lower hand to push off the body, that's where you got a problem. If he's pushing through an extended cross and makes contact with the body, as long as they go through that extended cross first, everything is going to be just fine. And again, the last note, in addition to the ward, let's also make sure that we're looking for spearing and a legal body check. The previous college clip involving Denver, you can see that defender really led with his helmet. That's hard to see at game speed, but just know that these are some of the things that we need to be watching out for. Well, guys, we really flew through this a lot quicker than I would have thought. But just a quick meeting in review. Guys, the rule book at all levels is becoming incredibly nuanced. This game is getting harder and harder to officiate because there are more and more very subtle rules at play. Let's really make sure that we're working hard to know the rule books, to know the interpretations, to know what we're looking at. Keep in mind that the game is also getting incredibly fast, and it's a lot faster year in and year out. So let's make sure that we're working on conditioning and making sure that we're using the best mechanics to make sure that we're in the right places. With three distinct conferences, regional variances can happen. The way that I see a play is very different than can be very different than the way that an official in Milwaukee sees it. So, guys, these rules meetings, these videos, these conference calls, these are very important to maintain some level of standardization, throughout the entire state. So, standardizing our interpretations and our messaging to the coaches and players will really ease, some of the tensions that are happening out there. It's going to create that greater uniformity across the board that, should make our lives a whole lot easier. So, gentlemen, with that said, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop us a line, shoot us an email. We're happy to help out. We're happy to offer clarification. And guys, I wish you the best of luck with the coming season. And yeah, have a good call out there. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, guys, thanks again for giving up your Sunday night, and have a great evening. Take care.